So what we're wanting to do is learn how to stretch text over a curve or a path. In GIMP is always the way it's done. So what I usually do is let's type some text here. Some text. And we'll stretch that over something. Now let's capitalize that, might as well. Just to keep it looking cool. Let's say I've got something in the middle here that I wanted to wrap that text around. And we could do that. Just take a little oval or something like that, fill it full of blue. Let's make a new layer. Let's call it layer. And then I want to add blue to it. So this text, this layer, move it up to the top here, just for giggles. And I wanted to stretch that somewhere over the top. So I wanted it to be like this, but arced. So I could do that. I'll just leave it up there for a second. We're going to just make an arc real quick. So there's this little tool right here, and it's called the Paths tool. You could click it by hitting B on your keyboard. So just go like that. Then we're going to start roughly the same size as the text is, and I'm just going to start creating a little arc. I like two points for elliptical arcs just because they're cleaner. And you could stretch the handles just by hovering over them, and get something that's clean that looks good to your eye. Then you can come back and actually grab each of these points and just put them wherever you want. So just do that until it looks good. Now we're not trying to be terribly accurate. You could get more accurate with it, but anyway, so the next step is to take that arc and map text to it. So you've got text right there. So you come over here to your Paths button. That might be in a default installation somewhere else. I have mine down here by my layers because I use layers and paths, and I use the channels terribly often, but anyway, paths right there. And so you get this path, and if you highlight it, you can see that it's turning red right here in the center. It's just an easy way to see things. Click on unnamed here, which is the first path. We can call it whatever we want. Some text. Up to the layers. If we're in paths, we scoot over to layers and right click on some text. This is the text that we want to map. As you can see, it's a text layer. It'll have the little T there. If it's like the layer here, it doesn't have a T, that means it's not a text layer. Because there's text which it contains different information, of course, than the when you render the text layer turns into just a regular graphic layer. So let's right click on some text and come to text along path. Okay, so it gives you kind of a funky looking little setup there. We don't care about that. We want to create a new layer because we're going to spill and fill filled. Call that layer filled. We're going to fill that layer, but you first have to select paths, and now you can see that some text has been, it's a new path. All these little guys, these little bubbles up there, those are points, and you could stretch and you can move things around. You want to unselect. Okay, so deselect there, or select none. We're going to go to our paths, and we're going to go fill path, solid color, fill. There we go. Now we could turn that off because we don't want all those little bubbles on our screen anymore. And come over to the filled layer. Turn off some text here. We're just going to move it around. Here's another example. If we have the some text layer on, if we zoom in, you can see that it's really nice and tight. Super duper tight right there. I mean, if you go into the edges, if you look at how clear the edges are, they're not bad. That's really good for raster graphic. This top line, perfect. But we get a little bit of tessellation or pixelation, whatever, started over on this side. And of course, diagonals are always going to be, because they're squares. It's a raster graphic. So you get little boxes of color. And that's okay for text. If you're going to zoom out, that looks really clear. The human eye is never going to see that. The pixels are too small for us to really pick out. Maybe if you're a fly or a newt. Up here you have some text, and then below you have some text. They're both different. Again, if you zoomed in to it, let's see, zoom in here. This is pixelated far beyond what this is up here. Text layers are just cleaner because they haven't been scaled or moved or changed. If we were to take this text layer, click on some text, and scale it, or rotate it, or whatever, you can see how that pixelates. And also, I wanted you to notice that as soon as you move it or change anything, scale it or tweak it in any way, that some text layer becomes a non-text layer. So, if you want to save your layers and just duplicate them, it'll be a lot easier for you to manipulate text. And because if I do this again, if I use the unified transform, I always get that wrong. If you change it, like say you want to, skew it a little bit and transform it. Again, it doesn't look bad when you zoom out, but when you zoom in, oh my goodness, yeah, you get lots of pixels all over the place. And there's ways to fix that, but they're not really very great in GIMP. GIMP is a great tool for some things. It's just not quite there yet on other things. That'll give you an idea. If you wanted to go back and undo those steps, you could take that some text and just duplicate the layer. Yeah, duplicate. Then you have two text layers. You can work on one and have one in the backup. Now, I have my philosophy is always be saving. So I could take this some text, just leave some text there, and take this other layer, some text, and put it in a new layer group. Now I'm going to call that layer group backup or back or whatever is intuitive for you. And then I'll move that down to the bottom and I'll turn it off. That way nobody sees it. It's just there. It's like a little hopper for assets, if you will. So that some text layer is always going to be text now because I'm going to make copies of it. And let's say I work on a layer. I could come down here to this layer and I say I want to make that a different color. What I would do with this one is I would duplicate it. Okay, I'll drag that original layer down into my backup so it sits there and just, it's in the hopper. And then I could go highlight that layer and go over to map. I think that is under, let's see, is it tool of colors? Yes, it's under colors. And so you could come down here and go color exchange. Say I wanted, some groovy Cisco color in there. Incidentally, that blue that I'm using is a Cisco color. Cisco's got a really great green. And they've got an orange. So you could do that. You could go with that green. Or let's see, cancel. I've got to go back to from color. We use the dropper and grab that color. And it changes it to whatever color is in the to field here. So what we're going to do is grab that green and go OK. Now if you wanted to do something else groovy, you could take this some text filled and move it. You move it in here. And zoom out a little bit. And so that's how you manipulate text and colors and things of that nature. I hope that helped.